wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled on your first night. I actually work in that office before you, finishing up my last week now as a matter of fact, so I know it can be a bit overwhelming. But I'm here to tell you there's nothing to worry about. You'll do fine. So let's just focus on getting you through your first week, okay? There you go, Aunt Mage. There's your bit. Well, howdy, howdy, howdy. Here we are with another soft voice day. As for how I'm doing, I would say I'm okay. Fairly tired. I've not been getting a lot of sleep, but we're here nonetheless. Hello, Aunt Mage. Hello, Julie. How are you guys doing today? As you listen to stories for half an hour, get you all relaxed for sleep, that's why we're here. That is what we do here. Now for today, I think I'm going to go back into my favorite book series, which is again, the Belgariad, because, you know, I'm having fun reading it. Let's see, anything to note? No, today was just work and plenty of planning. Yesterday was just working at the guild. We also do have to inform everyone that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I will not be here. I will be working at a convention, so yeah, let's do stuff during the week until it's time for me to go. And then after that, I'll be there. The week after that, should still be here. Then the week after that, be away for a week and then come back. You're sad, you've been on your bed hearing your comfort songs on loop for the last 2 hours. Boy, I understand that. Definitely been there. What is your current comfort song, busy man? Unfortunately. But it is going to be fun. Isn't that the important thing? Let's see, my current comfort song is a lovely concerto. I'm gonna grab the link to it right now because the song just plays religiously in my brain. It's gorgeous. Howdy, howdy, howdy. I'll put it in Twitch, and then I'll put it in YouTube as well. Hello, Sunny. Hello, Lee. Welcome in. You just came to say hi today because you have to go to bed soon? Sounds good, Sunny. You know, if you stay, it's a pretty good way to put you to sleep. But I hope you rest easy. Have sweet, sweet dreams. But yeah, I really do enjoy this song. Just guitars, some lovely classical instruments in the back, scenes it takes you in your wandering eye. Night sunny. Even though it was raining, it was very, very nice. Still thinking about the song. But, alright. I suppose that is enough faffing about. Let's go ahead and get back into it with Chapter 16 of The Queen of Sorcery, the Belgariad, Book 2. To remind everyone of what's happening, the party has entered the imperial city of Tolhoneth, and they're on their way now to see the Emperor. Here we go. The Imperial Palace sat on a high hill in the center of Tolhoneth. It consisted not of one building, but rather was a complex of many, large and small, all built of marble and surrounded by gardens and lawns where cypress trees cast a pleasant shade. The entire compound was enclosed by a high wall, surmounted by statues spaced at intervals along its top. Legionnaires at the palace gate recognized the Trek ambassador and sent immediately for one of the Emperor's chamberlains, a gray-haired official in a brown mantle. "I need to see Ranboroon, Lord Morin," Grinnick told him as they all dismounted in the marble courtyard just inside the palace gate. "It's a matter of urgency." "Of course, Lord Grinnig," the gray-haired man assented. "His Imperial Majesty is always delighted to speak with the personal envoy of King Anhag. Unfortunately, His Majesty is resting just now. I should be able to get you in to see him sometime this afternoon. Tomorrow morning at the latest." "This won't wait, Morin," Grinnick said. "We have to see the Emperor immediately. You'd better go wake him up." Lord Morin looked surprised. "Can't be that urgent," he suggested chidingly. "I'm afraid so," Grinnick said. Morin pursed his lips thoughtfully as he looked at each member of the party. "You know me well enough to realize that I wouldn't ask this lightly, Morin," Grinnick said. "The odds are already coming." "Good." Morin sighed. "I'm trusting you a great deal, Grinnig. All right, come along. Ask your soldiers to wait." Grinnig made a curt gesture to his guards, and the party followed Lord Morin through a broad courtyard to a carved gallery that ran along one of the buildings. "How's he been?" Grinnig asked as they walked along the shady gallery. "His health is good," Morin answered, "but his temper's been deteriorating lately. The Boroons have been resigning their posts in flocks and returning to Tol Boroon." "That seems prudent under the circumstances," Grinnig said. "I suspect that a certain number of fatalities are likely to accompany the succession." "Probably so," Morin agreed. "But His Majesty finds it a bit distressing to be abandoned by members of his own family." He stopped by an arched marble gate where two legionnaires in gold-embellished breastplates stood stiffly. "Please, leave your weapons here. His Majesty is sensitive about such things. I'm sure you can understand." "Of course," Grinnig said. pulling a heavy sword out from under his mantle and leaning it against the wall. They all followed his example, and Lord Morin's eyes flickered slightly with surprise when Silk removed 3 different daggers from various places beneath his garments. Formidable equipment, the Chamberlain's hands flickered in the gestures of the secret language. Troubled times, Silk's fingers explained deprecatingly. Lord Morin smiled faintly and led them through the gate into the garden beyond. The lawn in the garden was neatly manicured. There were softly splashing fountains, and the rose bushes were all well pruned. Fruit trees that seemed to be very old were budding, almost ready to burst into bloom in the warm sun. Sparrows bickered over nesting sites on the twisted limbs. Rennig and the others followed Morin along a curving marble walk towards the center of the garden. Ranborun the 23rd, Emperor of Tolnedra, was a small elderly man, quite bald and dressed in a gold-colored mantle. He lounged in a heavy chair beneath a budding grape arbor, feeding small seeds to a bright canary perched on the arm of his chair. The Emperor had a little beak-like nose and bright, inquisitive eyes. I said I wanted to be left alone, Morin, he said in a testy voice, looking up from the canary. A million apologies, Your Majesty, Lord Morin explained, bowing deeply. Lord Grinnig, the ambassador of Cherek, wishes to present you a matter of gravest urgency. He convinced me that it simply could not wait. The Emperor looked sharply at Grinnig. His eyes grew sly, almost malicious. I see that your beard's beginning to grow back, Grinnig. Grinnig's face flushed slowly. I should have known that Your Majesty would have heard of my little misfortune. I know everything that happens in Tol Horneth, Lord Grinnig, the Emperor snapped, even if all my cousins and nephews are running like rats out of a burning house. I still have a few faithful people around me. Whatever possessed you to take up with that Nadrak woman? I thought you Alorans despised Angarax. Grinnig coughed awkwardly and glanced quickly at Aunt Pole. It was kind of a joke, Your Majesty, he said. I thought it might embarrass the Nadrak ambassador, and his wife is, after all, a handsome-looking woman. I didn't know she kept a pair of scissors under her bed. She keeps your beard in a little gold box, you know, the Emperor smirked, and she shows it to all her friends. She's an evil woman, Grinnig said mournfully. Who are these? The Emperor asked, waving one finger at the members of the party standing on the grass, somewhat behind Ambassador Grinnig. My cousin Barak and some friends, Grinnig said. They're the ones who need to talk to you. The Earl of Trelheim, the Emperor asked. What are you doing in Tol Honeth, my lord? Passing through, Your Majesty, Barak replied, bowing. And Borun looked sharply at each of the rest in turn, as if actually seeing them for the first time. And this would be Prince Keldar of Drasnia, he said, who left Tol Honeth in a hurry last time he was here, posing as an acrobat in a traveling circus, I believe, and about one jump ahead of the police. Silk also bowed politely. And Hedar of Algaria, the Emperor continued, the man who's trying to depopulate Cthulhu Murgos single-handedly. Hedar inclined his head. Orin, the Emperor demanded sharply, why have you surrounded me with Alorans? I don't like Alorans. It's this matter of urgency, Your Majesty, Morin replied apologetically. And in a rend? The Emperor said, looking at Mandoralin. A membrate, I should say. His eyes narrowed. From the descriptions I've heard, he could only be the Baron of Vomandor. And Around's bow was gracefully elaborate. Thine eye is most keen, your majesty, to have read us each in turn without prompting. Not all of you precisely, the emperor said. I don't recognize the Sendar or the Riven lad. Arian's mind jumped. Barak had once told him he resembled a Riven more than anything else, but that thought had been lost in the welter of events which had followed the chance remark. Now the Emperor of Tolnedra, whose eyes seemed to have an uncanny ability to penetrate the true nature of things, had also identified him as a Riven. He glanced quickly at Aunt Pole, but she seemed absorbed in examining the bush buds on a rose bush. The Sendar is Sternik, Mr. Wolf said, a smith. In Sendaria, that useful trade is considered somewhat akin to nobility. The lad's my grandson, Garion. The Emperor looked at the old man. It seems that I should know who you are. There's something about you. He paused thoughtfully. The canary, which had been perched on the arm of the Emperor's chair, suddenly burst into song. He launched himself into the air and fluttered directly to Aunt Pole. She held out her finger, and the bright bird landed there, tipped back his head, and sang ecstatically, as if his tiny heart were breaking with adoration. She listened gravely to his song. She wore a dark blue dress, elaborately laced at the bodice, with a short sable cape. What are you doing with my canary? The Emperor demanded. Listening, she said. How did you get him to sing? I've been trying to coax him into song for months. You didn't take him seriously enough. Who is this woman? The Emperor asked. My daughter Pulgara, Mr. Wolf said. She has a particularly keen understanding of birds. The Emperor laughed suddenly, a harshly skeptical laugh. Oh, come now. You really don't expect me to accept that, do you? Wolf looked at him gravely. Are you really sure you don't know me, Ranboroon? He asked mildly. The pale green mantle Grinnick had lent him made him look almost like a Tolnedran. Almost, but not quite. It's a clever ruse, the Emperor said. You look the part, and so does she, but I'm not a child. I gave up fairy tales a long time ago. That's a pity. I'd guess that's your life's been a little empty since then. Wolf looked around at the manicured garden, with the servants and fountains and the members of the Emperor's personal guard posted unobtrusively here and there among the flower beds. Even with all this, Ranboroon, a life without any wonder left in it is flat and stale. His voice was a little sad. I think that perhaps you gave up too much. Morin, Ranboroon demanded peremptorily. That's a word. Send for Zuriel. We'll settle this immediately. At once, Your Majesty, Morin said, and beckoned to one of the servants. May I have my canary back? The Emperor asked Aunt Pole rather plaintively. Of course. She moved across the grass toward the chair, stepping slowly to avoid startling the trilling little bird. Sometimes I wonder what they're saying when they sing, Ranboroon said. Right now, he's telling me about the day he learned to fly, Aunt Pole said. That's a very important day for a bird. She reached out her hand, and the canary hopped onto the Emperor's finger, still singing, with its bright eye cocked towards Ranboroon's face. That's an amusing conceit, I suppose. The little old man smiled, staring out at the sunlight sparkling on the water in one of the fountains. But I'm afraid I don't have the time for that kind of thing. Right now, the whole nation is holding its breath in anticipation of my death. They all seem to think that the greatest thing I can do for Tolnedra is to die immediately. Some of them have even gone to the trouble of trying to help me along. We caught 4 assassins inside the palace grounds just last week. Runes, my own family, are deserting me to the point that I scarcely have enough people left to run the palace, much less the empire. Ah, here comes Surreal. A lean, bushy-browed man in a red mantle covered with mystic symbols scurried across the lawn and bowed deeply to the Emperor. You sent for me, Your Majesty. I am informed that this woman is Pulgara the Sorceress, the Emperor said, and that the old man there is Belgarath. Be a good fellow, Zuriel, and have a look into their credentials. Belgarath and Pulgara, the bushy-browed man scoffed. Surely Your Majesty isn't serious. The names are mythological. No such people exist. You see, the Emperor said to Antipole, you don't exist. I have it on the very best authority. Zuriel's a wizard himself, you know. Really? One of the very best, he assured her. Of course, most of his tricks are just sleight of hand, since sorcery's only a sham, but he amuses me, and he takes himself very seriously. You may proceed, Zuriel, but try not to raise an awful stink the way you usually do. That won't be necessary, Your Majesty, Zuriel said flatly. If they were wizards of any kind, I'd have recognized them immediately. We have special ways of communicating, you know. Aunt Pole looked at the wizard with one eyebrow slightly raised. I think that you should look a bit closer, Zuriel, she suggested. Sometimes we miss things. She made an almost imperceptible gesture, and Garion seemed to hear a faint rush of sound. The wizard stared, his eyes fixed on open air directly in front of him. His eyes began to bulge, and his face turned deathly pale. As if his legs had been cut from under him, he fell onto his face. Forgive me, Lady Pulgara, he croaked, groveling. That's supposed to impress me, I assume, the Emperor said. I've seen men's minds overwhelmed before, however, and Zuriel's mind isn't all that strong to begin with. This is getting tiresome, Ranborun, she said tartly. You really ought to believe her, you know, the canary spoke in its tiny piping voice. I knew who she was immediately. Of course, we're much more perceptive than you things that creep around on the ground. Why do that? If you'd just try, I'm sure you'd be able to fly. And I wish you'd stop eating so much garlic. It makes you smell awful. Hush now, Antpole said gently to the bird. You can tell him about it later. The Emperor was trembling violently, and he stared at the bird as if it were a snake. Why don't we all just behave as if we believe that Pulgara and I are who we say we are, Mr. Wolf suggested. We could spend all the rest of the day trying to convince you, and we really don't have that much time. There are some things I have to tell you, and they're important, no matter who I am. I think I can accept that, Ranborun said, still trembling and staring at the now silent canary. Mr. Wolf clasped his hands behind his back and stared up at a cluster of picking sparrows on the limb of a nearby tree. Early last fall, he began, Zedar the Apostate crept into the throne room at Riva and stole the Orb of Alder. He did what? Ranborun demanded, sitting up quickly, How? I don't know, Wolf answered. When I catch up with him, maybe I'll ask him. I'm sure, however, that you can see the importance of the event. Obviously, the Emperor said. The Alorns and the Cendars are quietly preparing for war, Wolf told him. War? Ranbaroon asked in a shocked voice. With whom? The Angorax, of course. What's Zedar got to do with the Angorax? He could be acting on his own, couldn't he? Surely you're not that simple, Antipole remarked. You forget yourself, lady, Ranbaroon said stiffly. Where's Zedar now? He went through Tolhoneth about 2 weeks ago, Wolf replied. If he can get across the border into one of the Angorak kingdoms before I can stop him, the Alorns will march. And Arendia with them, Andorellen said firmly. King Corellin hath also been advised. We'll tear the world apart, the Emperor protested. Perhaps, Wolf admitted. But we can't let Zedar get to Tarak with the orb. We'll send emissaries at once, Ranbaroon said. This has to be headed off before it gets out of hand. A little late for that, Borak said grimly. Ernheg and the others aren't in any mood for Tolnedran diplomacy right now. Your people have a bad reputation in the north, your majesty, Silk pointed out. They always seem to have a few trade agreements up their sleeves. Every time Tolnedra mediates a dispute, it seems to cost a great deal. I don't think we can afford your good offices anymore. A cloud passed in front of the sun, and the garden seemed suddenly chilly in its shadow. This is being blown all out of proportion, the Emperor protested. The Alorns of the Angorax have been squabbling over that worthless stone for thousands of years. You've been waiting for the chance to fall on each other, and now you've got an excuse. Well, enjoy yourselves. Tolnedra's not going to get involved as long as I'm her emperor. You're not going to be able to sit on one side of this, Ranbaroon, Antipole said. Why not? The orb doesn't concern me one way or the other. Go ahead and destroy each other if you want. Tolnedra will still be here when it's all over. I doubt it, Wolf told him. Your empire's crawling with Murgos. They could overrun you in a week. They're honest merchants, here on honest business. Murgos don't have honest business, Antipole told him. Every Murgo in Tolnedra is here because he was sent by the Grolem High Priest. That's an exaggeration, Ranbaroon said stubbornly. The whole world knows that you and your father have an obsessive hatred of all Angorax, but times have changed. Although Murgos is still ruled from Rakathol, Wolf said, and Katuchik is master there. Katuchik hasn't changed, even if the world has. Merchants from Rakgoska might seem civilized to you, but they all jump when Katuchik whistles, and Katuchik's the disciple of Tarak. Tarak's dead. Really? Antipole said. Have you seen his grave? Have you opened the grave and seen his bones? My empire's very expensive to run, the Emperor said, and I need the revenue the Murgos bring me. I've got agents in Rakgoska and all along the South Caravan route, so I'd know if the Murgos were getting ready for any kind of move against me. I'm just a little suspicious that all this might be the result of some internal contention within the Brotherhood of Sorcerers. You people have your own motives, and I'm not going to let you use my empire as a pawn in your power struggles. Following will come. And as a reminder, we are currently on chapter, I think I had said 17, of The Queen of Sorcery, which is book 2 in the Belgariad series. And if the Angorax win, Antipole said, How do you plan to deal with Tarak? I'm not afraid of Tarak. Have you ever met him? Wolf asked. Obviously not. Listen, Belgarath, you and your daughter have never been friendly to Tolnedra. You treated us like a defeated enemy after Vomimbre. Your information's interesting, and I'll consider it in its proper perspective, but Tolnedran policy is not dominated by Aloran preconceptions. Our economy relies heavily on trade along the South Caravan route. I'm not going to disrupt my empire simply because you happen to dislike Murgos. You're a fool, then, Wolf said bluntly. You'd be surprised at how many people think so, the Emperor replied. Maybe you'll have better luck with my successor. If he's a Vorduvian or a Honeth, you might even be able to bribe him. But Boruns don't take bribes. Or advice, Antpol added. Only when it suits us, Lady Pulgara, Ranborun said. I think we've done everything we can here, Wolf decided. A bronze door at the back of the garden slammed open, and a tiny girl with flaming hair stormed through, her eyes ablaze. At first, Garion thought she was a child, but as she came closer, he realized that she was somewhat older than that. Although she was very small, the short, sleeveless green tunic she wore displayed limbs that were much closer to maturity. He felt a peculiar kind of shock when he saw her, almost, but not quite like recognition. Her hair was a tumbled mass, with long, elaborate curls cascading down over her neck and shoulders, and it was a color that Garion had never seen before, a deep, burnished red that seemed somehow to glow from within. Her skin was a golden color that seemed, as she swept the shadows of the tree near the gate, to have an almost greenish cast to it. She was in a state verging on sheer rage. Why am I being kept prisoner here? She demanded of the Emperor. What are you talking about? Ranborun asked. The Legionnaires won't let me leave the palace grounds. Oh, the Emperor said. That. Exactly. That. They're acting on my orders, Sinedra, the Emperor told her. So they said. Tell them to stop it. No. No? Her tone was incredulous. No? Her voice climbed several octaves. What do you mean, no? It's too dangerous for you to be out in the city just now, the Emperor said placatingly. Nonsense, she snapped. I don't intend to sit around this stuffy palace just because you're afraid of your own shadow. I need some things from the market. Send someone. I don't want to send anyone, she shouted at him. I want to go myself. Well, you can't, he said flatly. Spend your time on your studies instead. I don't want to study, she cried. Jeepers is a stuffy idiot and he bores me. I don't want to sit around talking about history or politics or any of the rest of it. I just want an afternoon to myself. I'm sorry. Please, Father, she begged, her tone dropping into a wheedling note. She took hold of one of the folds on his gold mantle and twisted it around one of her tiny fingers. Please? The look she directed at the Emperor through her lashes would have melted stone. Absolutely not, he said, refusing to look at her. My order stands. You will not leave the palace grounds. I hate you, she cried. Then she ran from the garden in tears. My daughter, the Emperor explained almost apologetically. You can't imagine what it's like having a child like that. Oh, I can imagine all right, Mr. Wolf said, glancing at Aunt Pole. She looked back at him, her eyes challenging. Go ahead and say it, Father, she told him. I'm sure you won't be happy until you do. Wolf shrugged. Forget it. Renboru looked thoughtfully at the two of them. It occurs to me that we might be able to negotiate a bit here, he said, his eyes narrowing. What did you have in mind? Wolf asked. You have a certain authority among the Alorns, the Emperor suggested. Some, Wolf admitted carefully. If you were to ask them, I'm sure they'd be willing to overlook one of the more absurd provisions of the Accords of Omimbre. Which one is that? There's really no necessity for Sinedra to journey to Riva, is there? I'm the last emperor of the Borun dynasty, and when I die, she won't be an imperial princess anymore. Under the circumstances, I'd say that the requirement doesn't really apply to her. It's nonsense anyway. The line of the Riven King became extinct 1,300 years ago. So there isn't going to be any bridegroom waiting for her in the Hall of the Riven King. As you've seen, Tolnedra's a very dangerous place just now. Sinedra's 16th birthday is only a year or so off, and the date's well known. If I have to send her to Riva, half the assassins in the Empire are going to be lurking outside the palace gates, waiting for her to come out. I'd rather not take that kind of risk. If you could see your way clear to speak to the Alorns, I might be able to make a few concessions regarding the Murgos. Restriction on their numbers, closed areas, that sort of thing. No, Ranborun, Aunt Pole said flatly. Sinedra will go to Riva. You fail to understand that the Accords are only a formality. If your daughter's the one destined to become the bride of the Riven King, no force on earth can prevent her from being in the throne room at Riva on the appointed day. My father's recommendations about the Murgos are only suggestions for your own good. What you choose to do about the matter is your affair. I think we've just about exhausted the possibilities of this conversation, the Emperor stated coldly. Two important-looking officials came into the garden and spoke briefly to Lord Morin. Your Majesty, the gray-haired Chamberlain said deferentially, the Minister of Trade wanted to inform you that he's reached an excellent agreement with the trade deputation from Rakgoska. The gentlemen from Cathol Murgos were most accommodating. I'm delighted to hear it, Ranborun said, throwing a meaningful look at Mr. Wolf. The contingent from Rakgoska would like to pay their respects before they leave, Morin added. By all means, the Emperor said. I'll be delighted to receive them here. Morin turned and nodded shortly at the two officials near the gate. The officials turned and spoke to someone outside, and the gate swung open. 5 Murgos strode into the garden. Their coarse black robes were hooded, but the hoods were thrown back. The front of the robes were unclasped, and the chain-mail shirts they all wore gleamed in the sunlight. The Murgo in front was a bit taller than the others, and his bearing indicated that he was the leader of the deputation. A welter of images and partial memories flooded Garion's mind as he looked at the scar-faced enemy he had known all his life. The strange pull of the silent, hidden linkage between them touched him. It was Asherak. Something brushed Garion's mind, tentative only. not the powerful force the Murgo had directed at him in the dim hallway in Anhig's palace at Valalorn. The amulet under his tunic became very cold, and yet seemed to burn at the same time. "Your Imperial Majesty," Asherak said, striding forward with a cold smile. "We are honored to be admitted in your august presence." He bowed, his mail shirt clinking. Arak was holding Hetar's right arm firmly, and Mandarellin moved and took the other. "I'm overjoyed to see you again, worthy Asherak," the Emperor said. "I'm told that an agreement has been reached." "Beneficial to both sides, Your Majesty." "The best kind of agreement," Ranbarun approved. "Tar Urges, King of the Murgos, sends his greetings," Asherak said. "His Majesty feels most keenly the desirability of cementing relations between Cthul Murgos and Tolnetra. He hopes that one day he may call your Imperial Majesty brother. We respect the powerful, peaceful intentions and legendary wisdom of Tar Urges." The Emperor smiled with a certain smugness. Asherak looked around, his black eyes flat. "Well, Ambar," he said to Silk, "your fortunes seem to have improved since we met last in Mingan's counting room in Dareen." Silk spread his hands in an innocent-looking gesture. "The gods have been kind. Most of them, anyway." Asherak smiled briefly. "You know each other?" the Emperor asked, a bit surprised. "We've met, Your Majesty," Silk admitted. "In another kingdom," Asherak added. He looked directly then at Mr. Wolf. "Belgarath?" he said politely with a brief nod. "Shamdar," the old man replied. "You're looking well." "Thank you." "It seems that I'm the only stranger here," the Emperor said. "Shamdar and I have known each other for a very long time," Mr. Wolf told him. He glanced at the Murgo with a faintly malicious twinkle in his eyes. "I see that you've managed to recover from your recent indisposition." Asherak's face flickered with annoyance, and he quickly looked at his shadow on the grass as if for reassurance. Arian remembered what Wolf had said atop the Tor after the attack of the Algaroths. Something about a shadow returning by an indirect route. For some reason, the information that Asherak the Murgo and Shamdar the Grolem were the same man did not particularly surprise him. Like a complex melody that had been faintly out of tune, the sudden merging of the two seemed right somehow. The knowledge clicked in his mind like a key in a lock. "Someday you'll have to show me how you did that," Asherak was saying. "I found the experience interesting. My horse had hysterics, however." "My apologies to your horse." "Why is it that I feel as if I'm missing about half of this conversation?" Ranbarun asked. "Forgive us, Your Majesty," Asherak said. "Ancient Belgarath and I are renewing an old enmity. We've seldom had the opportunity to speak to each other with any degree of civility." He turned and bowed politely to Antipole. "My Lady Bulgara, you're as beautiful as ever." He eyed her with a deliberate, suggestive stare. "You haven't changed much either, Shamdar." Her tone was mild, even bland, but Garion, who knew her so well, recognized immediately the deadly insult she had just delivered to the Grolem. "Charming," Asherak said with a faint smile. "This is better than a play!" the Emperor cried delightedly. "You people are actually dripping with malice. I wish I'd had the opportunity to see the first act. The first act was very long, Your Majesty, Ashrak said, and quite often tedious. As you may have noticed, Elgarath sometimes gets carried away with his own cleverness. I'm certain I'll be able to make up for that, Mr. Wolf told him with a slight smile. I promise you that the last act will be extremely short, Shamdar. Threats, old man? Ashrak asked. I thought we'd agreed to be civilized. I can't recall when we ever agreed on anything, Wolf said. He turned to the Emperor. I think we'll leave now, Ranboroon, he said. With your permission, of course. Of course, the Emperor replied. I'm pleased to have met you, though I still don't believe in you naturally. My skepticism, however, is theological, not personal. I'm glad of that, Wolf said, and quite suddenly he grinned impishly at the Emperor. Ranboroon laughed. I look forward to our next meeting, Belgarath, Ashrak said. I wouldn't if I were you, Wolf advised him, then turned and led the way out of the Emperor's garden. Now we're on chapter 17. Ooh, man, what a chapter. So much talking, but it's very, very fun. Xavier, thank you for following as well. Welcome in. I did pick kind of a funny time to though, because I'm going to take this time to take a small break. So, gonna drink some water and then be back before you know it. Go ahead and take this time to maybe snuggle in, get cozy, and we'll continue reading very, very, very soon. I forgot my glasses. returned. Gotta say, man, it's been so cold today. Winter is finally settling in. Somewhere in the last chapter, did you hear the name Tarask? No, not like the big guy from D&D. There's a few names that are similar, like there's Asherak. There's Asherak, yeah, that's the name. It's enragingly hot. Not here, at least. I hope you're staying cool then, Lee. But no, it has been very cold this morning, and then it started to rain for just about most of the day, so it only got colder. Well, no time like the present. Let's go ahead and keep going, shall we? Chapter 17. When you woke up today, you had a little frost in your nose. Ooh, that's real cold. I was just able to see my breath outside. That's rough. Chapter 17. It was mid-afternoon when they emerged from the palace gate. The broad lawns were green in the warm spring sunlight, and the cypress trees stirred in a faint breeze. "I don't think we want to stay in Tol Honeth too much longer," Wolf said. "Do we leave now, then?" Mandarellen asked. "There's something I have to do first," Wolf replied, squinting into the sunlight. "Barak and his cousin will come along with me. The rest of you, go on back to Grinnick's house and wait there. We'll stop by the central market on our way," Antipole told him. "There are a few things I need." "This isn't a shopping expedition, Pole." "The Grollems already know we're here, Father," she said, "so there's no point in creeping about like sneak thieves, is there?" He sighed. "All right, Pole. I knew you'd see it my way," she said. Mr. Wolf shook his head helplessly and rode off with Barak and Grinnig. The rest of them rode down the hill from the palace toward the gleaming city below. The streets at the foot of the hill were broad and lined on either side by magnificent houses, each almost a palace in itself. "The rich and the noble," Silk said. "In Tol Honeth, the closer you live to the palace, the more important you are." "'Tis oft-times thus, Prince Keldar," Mandarellen observed. "Wealth and positions sometimes need the reassurance of proximity to the seat of power. By ostentation and propinquity to the throne, small men are able to avoid facing their own inadequacy." "I couldn't have said it better myself," Silk said. The central marketplace of Tol Honeth was a vast square filled with bright-colored booths and stalls where a significant portion of the goods of the world were on display. Antipole dismounted, left her horse with one of the Chirek guards, and moved busily from booth to booth, buying, it appeared, almost everything in sight. Silk's face blanched often at her purchases, since he was paying for them. "Can't you talk to her?" the small man pleaded with Garion. "She's destroyed me." "What makes you think she'd listen to me?" Garion asked. "Could at least try," Silk said desperately. 3 richly mantled men stood near the center of the market, arguing heatedly. "You're mad, Haldor," one of them, a thin man with a snub nose, said agitatedly. "The Honeths would strip the Empire for their own profit." His face was flushed, and his eyes bulged dangerously. "Would Cador of the Vorduvians be any better?" The snout stout man named Haldor demanded. You're the one who's mad, Rodan. If we put Cador on the throne, he'll grind us all underfoot. There's such a thing as being too imperial. How dare you? Rodan almost screamed, his perspiring face growing darker. The Grand Duke Cador is the only possible choice. I'd vote for him even if he hadn't paid me. He flung his arms about wildly as he talked, and his tongue seemed to stumble over his words. Cador's a pig, Haldor said flatly, carefully watching Rodan as if gauging the impact of his words. An arrogant, brutal pig with no more right to the throne than a mongrel dog. His great-grandfather bought his way into the house of Vordu, and I'd sooner open a vein than bow to the offspring of a sneak thief from the docks of Tol Vordu. Dan's eyes almost started from his head at Haldor's calculated insults. He opened his mouth several times as if trying to speak, but his tongue seemed frozen with fury. His face turned purple, and he clawed at the air in front of him. Then his body stiffened and began to arch backward. Haldor watched him with an almost clinical detachment. With a strangled cry, Rodan toppled back onto the cobblestones, his arms and legs thrashing violently. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he began to foam at the mouth as his convulsions became more violent. He began to bang his head on the stones, and his twitching fingers clutched at his throat. Amazing potency, the third mantled man said to Haldor. Where'd you find it? A friend of mine recently made a voyage to this tour, Haldor said, watching Rodan's convulsions with interest. The beautiful part of it is that it's completely harmless unless one gets excited. Rodan wouldn't drink the wine until I tasted it first to prove it was safe. You've got the same poison in your own stomach? The other man asked with astonishment. I'm quite safe, Haldor said. My emotions never get the best of me. Rodan's convulsions had grown weaker. His heels beat at the stones with rapid pattering sound. Then he stiffened, gave a long, gurgling sigh, and died. I don't suppose you've got any of the drug left, do you? Haldor's friend asked thoughtfully. I'd be willing to pay quite a bit for something like that. Haldor laughed. Why don't we go to my house and we'll talk about it? Over a cup of wine, perhaps? The other man threw him a startled glance, then laughed too, although a bit nervously. The two of them turned and walked away, leaving the dead man sprawled on the stones. Arian stared in horror at them, and then at the black-faced corpse lying so grotesquely twisted in the center of the marketplace. The Tolnedrons near the body seemed to ignore its existence. Why doesn't somebody do something? He demanded. They're afraid, Silk said. If they show any concern, they might be mistaken for partisans. Politics here in Tol Honeth are taken very seriously. Shouldn't someone notify the authorities? Vernick suggested, his face pale and his voice shaking. I'm sure it's already been taken care of, Silk said. Let's not stand around staring. I don't think we want to get involved in this sort of thing. Aunt Pole came back to where they were standing. The two Trek warriors from Grinnick's house, who had been accompanying her, were loaded down with bundles, and both of them looked a little sheepish about it. What are you doing? She asked Silk. We were just watching a bit of Tolnedron politics in action, Silk said, pointing at the dead man in the center of the square. Poison? She asked, noting Radan's contorted limbs. Silk nodded. A strange one. It doesn't seem to work unless the victim gets excited. Ethsat, she said with a grim nod. You've heard of it before? Silk seemed surprised. She nodded. It's quite rare and very expensive. I didn't think the Niasans would be willing to sell any of it. I think we should move away from here, Edar suggested. There's a squad of legionnaires coming, and they might want to question any witnesses. Good idea, Silk said, and led them toward the far side of the marketplace. Near the row of houses that marked the edge of the square, 8 burly men carried a heavily veiled litter. As the litter approached, a slender jeweled hand reached languidly out from behind the veil and touched one of the porters on the shoulder. The 8 men stopped immediately and set the litter down. Silk? A woman's voice called from within the litter. What are you doing back in Tol Honeth? Ithra? Silk said. Is that you? The veil was drawn back, revealing a lushly endowed woman lounging on crimson satin cushions inside the litter. Her dark hair was elaborately curled with strings of pearls woven into her tresses. Her pink silken gown clung to her body, and golden rings and bracelets clasped her fingers and arms. Her face was breathtakingly beautiful, and her long-lashed eyes were wicked. There was about her a kind of overripeness and an almost overpowering sense of self-indulgent corruption. For some reason, Garion felt himself blushing furiously. I thought you'd still be running, she said archly to Silk. The men I sent after you were very professional. Silk bowed with an ironic little flourish. They were quite good, Bethra, he agreed with a wry grin. Not quite good enough, but very good, actually. I hope he didn't need them anymore. I always wondered why they didn't come back. She laughed. I should have known, of course. I hope he didn't take it personally. Certainly not, Bethra. It's just part of the profession, after all. I knew you'd understand, she said. I had to get rid of you. You were disrupting my entire plan. Silk grinned wickedly. I know, he gloated. And after all you had to go through to set it up, and with the Tholish ambassador, no less. She made a disgusted face. Whatever happened to him? Silk asked. He went swimming in the drain. I didn't know that Thol swam all that well. They don't, particularly not with large rocks tied to their feet. After you destroyed the whole thing, I didn't really need him anymore, and there were some things I didn't want him mentioning in certain quarters. We're always prudent, Bethra. What are you up to now? She asked curiously. Silk shrugged. A little of this, a little of that. The succession? Oh no, he laughed. I know better than to get involved in that. Which side are you on? Wouldn't you like to know? Silk looked around, his eyes narrowing. Give you some information, Bethra. If you're free to talk about it, of course. About what, Silk? The city seems to be awash with Murgos, Silk said. If you're not presently involved with them, I'd appreciate anything you could tell me. She smiled at him archly. And what would you be willing to pay? She asked. Couldn't we just call it professional courtesy? She smiled wickedly at him. Then she laughed. Why not? I like you, Silk, and I think I'll like you even more if you owe me a favor. I'll be your slave, he promised. Liar. She thought for a moment. The Murgos have never really shown all that much interest in trade, she said. But a few years ago, they began arriving in 2s and 3s, and then late last summer, whole caravans started coming in from Rakgoska. You think they want to influence the succession? Silk asked. That would be my guess, she said. There's a great deal of red gold in Tolhoneth suddenly. My coin chests are full of it. Silk grinned. It all spends. It does indeed. Have they picked any one candidate? Not that I've been able to determine. They seem to be divided into 2 different factions, and there's quite a bit of antagonism between them. That could be a ruse, of course. I don't think so. I think the antagonism has to do with the quarrel between Zedar and Katuchik. Each side wants to get to control of the next emperor. They're spending money like water. Do you know the one called Asherak? Ah, that one, she replied. The other Murgos are all afraid of him. At the moment he seems to be working for Katuchik, but I think he's playing some game of his own. He owns the Grand Duke Kador outright, and Kador's closest to the throne right now. That puts Asherak in a very powerful position. That's all I really know. Thank you, Bethra, Silk said respectfully. Are you planning on staying in Tolhoneth for long? She asked. Unfortunately, no. Pity. I was hoping you might be able to come by for a visit. To talk over old times. I don't have many close friends anymore, or dear enemies like you. Silk laughed dryly. I wonder why, he said. I don't imagine I could swim much better than the Tholish ambassador did. You're a dangerous woman, Bethra. In more ways than one, she admitted, stretching languidly. But your life's not really in any danger from me, Silk. Not anymore. It wasn't my life I was worried about, Silk grinned. That's another matter, of course, she admitted. Don't forget that you owe me a favor. I hunger for the opportunity to repay my debt, he said impudently. You're impossible, she laughed, then gestured to her porters, and they lifted her litter to their shoulders. Goodbye, Silk, she said. Goodbye, Bethra, he replied with a deep bow. Absolutely disgusting, Dernick said, in a voice strangled with outrage, as the porters marched away with the litter. Why is a woman like that even permitted to stay in the city? Bethra? Silk asked in surprise. She's the most brilliant and fascinating woman in Tolhoneth. Men come from all over the world just for an hour or 2 with her. For a price, of course, Dernick said. Don't misunderstand her, Dernick, Silk told him. Your conversation's probably more valuable than... Off slightly, with a quick glance at Aunt Pole. Really? Dernick questioned, in a voice heavy with sarcasm. Silk laughed. Dernick, he said, I love you like a brother, but you're a terrible prude. Do you know that? Leave him alone, Silk, Aunt Pole said firmly. I like him exactly the way he is. I'm only trying to improve him, Lady Pulgara, Silk explained innocently. Rak's right about you, Prince Keldar, she said. You're a very bad man. It's all in the line of duty. I sacrifice my more delicate feelings for the sake of my country. Of course. Surely you don't imagine I enjoy that sort of thing. Why don't we just let it drop? She suggested. Oh, Silk's always a funny character. I'm not done with the chapter, but I want to blow my nose. So be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Let's continue, shall we? Grinnig, Barak, and Mr. Wolf returned to Grinnig's house not long after the others had arrived. Well? Aunt Pole asked Wolf as the old man came into the room where they had been waiting. "We went south," Wolf said. "South? You didn't turn east toward Cthulmurgos?" "No," Wolf said. "He's probably trying to avoid a meeting with Katuchik's people. He'll look for a quiet place to slip across the border. Either that, or he's headed for Niasa. Perhaps he's made some arrangement with Sal Misra. We'll have to follow him to find out." "I met an old friend in the marketplace," Silk said from the chair in which he lounged. "She tells me that Asherak's been involved in the politics of succession. It appears that he's managed to buy the Grand Duke of Vordu. If the Vorduvians get the throne, Asherak's going to have Tolnedra in the palm of his hand." Mr. Wolf scratched thoughtfully at his beard. "We're going to have to do something about him sooner or later. He's beginning to make me just a little tired." "We could stop over for a day or so," Aunt Pole suggested. "Attend to it once and for all." "No," Wolf decided. "It's probably best not to do that sort of thing here in the city. The business is likely to be a bit noisy, and Tolnedrans get excited about things they can't understand. I'm sure he'll give us an opportunity later, in some less populated place." "We leave now then?" Silk asked. "Let's wait until the early morning," Wolf told him. "We'll probably be followed, but if the streets are empty, it'll make things a little more difficult for them." "I'll talk to my cook then," Grinnig said. "The least I can do is send you on your way with a good meal, and to help you face the road. Then, of course, there's still that barrel of ale to be dealt with." Mr. Wolf smiled broadly at that, then caught Aunt Pole's reproving frown. "It would only go flat, Pole," he explained. "Once it's broached, you have to drink it up fairly quickly. It'd be a shame to waste it, wouldn't it?" Oh. Turns out that's the end of chapter 17. Don't have much to wait for that. Nice. Let's see, what else do I have on here? Yeah. I recently took the time to purchase the Jurassic Park books. I don't know if anyone would be interested in hearing them, but I'm definitely interested in reading them. I do hate to make this. Oh, you're all about that Ant Mage? Excellent. We'll get to it soon. Now, though, I do think I'm going to take an early night. I have a lot to do this week, so I think I'll be streaming from earlier hours to get more stuff done before I disappear for a while. So everyone, rest easy, take care. I will catch you all soon.